Hello, and thank you for joining me on this week's episode of the show. We're so glad that you're here. Before I proceed to introduce our topic for this week, I'd like to say a special thank you to many of you who have subscribed to the channel. Thank you for the comments and thank you for the likes as well. Please keep them coming. So last week's edition discussed the state of democracy and freedom in East Africa. We looked at current developments in Kenya, Tanzania, and in Uganda. Little did we know then that we will see the events that unfolded in Tanzania last week. As you may have read in the news, some prominent East Africa civil rights leaders who had traveled to Tanzania from Kenya and Uganda were detained on arrival at the Dar es Salaam International Airport. They traveled to Dar es Salaam to observe court proceedings with the appearance of Chadema leader Tundu Lissu, who was due to appear in court last week with some of his party supporters over charges of treason the government of Tanzania had brought against them. Some of those said to have been detained included the former Chief Justice of Kenya. We also had leading human rights activists from Kenya as well as Uganda involved in the situation. We understand those detained have since been released, some 24 hours after, some for a more extended number of days. There are also allegations that some of these persons were tortured while in detention. The government of Tanzania has so far not issued a statement over why the civil rights leaders were arrested or indeed if they were tortured while in detention. But be that as it may, that action by the government of Tanzania sent shockwaves across the civil rights community in East Africa and beyond. This is considering Tanzania's long history of Pan-Africanism, particularly in the days of struggle for independence in Africa and the role they played. And of course, over several years, Tanzania has remained a model of democratic stability in Africa and in the region. So this week, we'll still stay on that central theme of issues around democracy and freedom in East Africa. But we want to turn our lenses towards countries in the region preparing for elections. Tanzania is due to hold elections in October of 2025. This will be followed by Uganda, that is due to conduct general elections the first week of January 2026. Prior to that, Uganda will also hold sub-national elections later in the year, November, December of 2025. Overall, the state of democracy in Uganda faces a significant threat due to President Yoweri Museveni's prolonged hold on power, which has now lasted as much as 4 decades. While Uganda continues to hold regular elections, their credibility has deteriorated. The country has been ruled by the National Resistance Movement, President Museveni, since 1986. Since his electoral victory in January of 2021, the president has continued to consolidate his authority. Prospects for a smooth presidential succession are rather uncertain. Despite his advanced age, President Museveni has not given any indication of relinquishing power. The president's long rule, as well as the rising political activities of his son, General Muguzi Kainerugaba, as well as the continued shrinking space in the country, continue to raise serious questions about the prospect of the 2026 elections and the future of democracy in the country. Civil and political space has shrunk due to the implementation of stringent laws that have suppressed opposition voices, as well as constant attacks on independent media. Uganda plays a key role in East Africa's security and stability. The country is actively involved in military operations in neighboring countries like the Congo Democratic Republic. So I ask, what happens when civil society loses its voice? And can that voice be reclaimed? Can civil society still push back? What's at stake for Uganda's democracy? These are the questions we would like to have your comments on. Please feel free to drop a comment and let us know what you think. Our guest on this show today is Mr. Henry Muguzi. Henry is a leading civil rights activist based in Kampala, Uganda. He is the executive director of the Alliance for Campaign finance monitoring, and overall coordinator of the African Election Observers Network, AFIONET. Henry is actively involved in activities for the defense of democracy, promoting transparency in party financing, protecting the rights of citizen election observers, as well as generating knowledge for civic engagement. Henry, thank you for joining us on the show today. Right. Thanks, Henry, for joining us. As I laid out in the opening monologue, that the state of democracy in Uganda indeed remains a source of concern. Now, from your vantage position as a leading expert on issues of democracy and governance, how would you describe Uganda's current political trajectory?
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, obviously. Let me start by saying that we have a political party whose leader has been in power for close to 4 decades. That party has 4 principles that have been outlined by the leader, General Yoweri Museveni. And one of those 4 principles is democracy. Now, the question is, are we practicing democracy as it is perceived by General Yoweri Museveni? We are at a time where elections are, I think, about 7 months away. That will be the general election. Mr. Museveni has been declared winner in every election he has contested in, but he has also been facing strong opposition. We live in a situation where the political parties in opposition are virtually not allowed to operate. Their activities are limited in the capital city, Kampala, and around their offices. Therefore, they are restricted from reaching the electorate. However, the party in power, NRM, is having a field day because for them they go everywhere, reach everywhere. They also have the advantage of riding on the structures of government, in which case it is sometimes difficult to draw the line between state and the party. In terms of civic space, of course, you know that civil society is one of the key stakeholders in any democracy. We have been the space we operate in as organizations working on democracy, elections, and governance has been shrinking. Many of us that work specifically on democracy have been denied working permits. Accreditation by the Electoral Commission is also hard to come by. You recall that the last time we had an election, we were arrested and detained for the crime of observing our own election. So that's where we stand. The private sector seem to have decided to retreat into their spaces. We face a situation where there is voter apathy because every time we go for an election, the voter turnout recorded is gets lower and lower. In 2021, when we had the last election, the voter turnout was recorded around 51% nationally. Recently, we had a by-election in one of the constituencies in Kampala city, and that by-election recorded a voter turnout of just of a paltry 17%. So the interest in citizens to turn out and vote is also dwindling. But overall, we are having an intensification of political party activities. So the party in power is preparing. They have just concluded the grassroots elections. The parties in opposition, they are going through elections of a kind because unlike the party in power, the NRM, that has been conducting grassroots elections, the opposition parties seem to be conducting elections from the top. Like, for example, the top leadership, who will be the president of the party, who will be the chairperson, who will lead this, who will lead that. They do not have the luxury of conducting grassroots elections. And many of them have actually resorted to deciding on flag bearers by consensus because it's difficult to conduct by-elections as in the true sense of the word. But otherwise, away from politics, Uganda is a peaceful country. We are at peace. People that don't meddle in politics are very happy. Those that are doing business are people that are going about their businesses as usual. And as we always said, that Uganda is a peaceful country, happy country for everyone that does not meddle in politics. So the moment you start questioning, holding people, elected leaders accountable, holding the party in power accountable, then you will have crossed the line, and then you face it tough. So if you don't mind about rights, you don't mind about civic duties, you'll find it peaceful. So that is generally what I can tell you about Uganda. But maybe lastly, the media is also under threat. The last time they participated in the by-election, it was clear what they are going to face in the coming election, because the brutality that was directed or meted at the media left a lot to be desired. The message is now clear to all journalists that if you dare point a camera at a security operative who is violating rights of citizens during a campaign, you are going to face it rough. That's where we stand as of now.
Well, thank you for aptly capturing the current situation of things in Uganda. And you said some very important, you raised some very important points that I will still want us to revisit. Particularly, you made reference to the fact that Uganda is a beautiful country. I can attest to that. It is indeed a beautiful country. But when it comes to issues of expressing political views, the experience may be very different from that idea of having a beautiful country. But I'll park that for now, and we'll come back to that later. Now, you mentioned that the political parties are already, in one shape or form, organizing the candidate selection process, albeit they are doing it in different shape and form. The prominent names that we have heard so far in the media space that may run in the next election is the rumor that the president may stand again. But keeping the president aside, who are the other key players that may emerge?
Yeah, so just for the president to stand again, that cannot be a rumor. That's a given. So for as long as he's alive and he's president, he shall contest in any election and he shall win it. But the other contestants are, of course, we still expect the leader of the National Unity Platform, Honorable Robert Chagulanyi, also known as Bobi Wine, to contest. So that's one. The second one is the leader of the Democratic Party, who is also minister in Museveni's government. His name is Honorable Norbert Mao. That one is also standing. But the third one is the son of the former president of Uganda, Dr. Apollo Milton Obote. His name, Honorable Jimmy Akena. He leads his father's party, the party we know well as Uganda People's Congress, UPC. So he's also contesting for presidency. So for those, but also we know that the Forum for Democratic Change Party is going through election, what we can call primaries, to decide who will contest for the election. Now, those have two candidates. The first candidate is the incumbent president of the party, who is the Amuriat, who is an engineer, is contesting with the Honorable Nathan Nandala Mafabi, who has been the Secretary General of that party. So the idea is Mafabi there is the leading contender. So those are the five we know. So we have Nandala Mafabi or Amuriat, either of those, then Bobi Wine, and then you have the son of the former president Obote, Jimmy Akena, and Norbert Mao. Those are the ones that we think that have already expressed interest, and it is clear they are going to contest on the presidency.
Yeah, thank you. So where do you place the likely candidacy of the president's oldest son? He's been very active on social media in recent times. Posting on several issues, including matters of security and even matters that borders on politics. Do you see him running, even though the president is also most likely going to run? Are we going to see a father-son candidacy in this election?
No, that can never happen in Uganda. So the president's son is not running. He's made it crystal clear, abundantly clear, that he's not running. So we don't expect him to run. He will remain as a man in uniform, the general who is also now the commander-in-chief of all land forces. So he cannot run. Of course, we knew there is a time he was trying to come up with a formation that they called the Patriotic League of Uganda, PLU. But eventually, I think he was advised to, to lie low. So he's going to be in the military. But he continues to tweet and make all manners of tweets, but also on things that raise the concerns of many Ugandans. He's an interesting general in terms of what he does, but also the fact that he has been violating the UPDF Act almost at will. The things he does depict a general above the law and one that cannot be sanctioned by anyone, including his father. In fact, there have been colleagues that have even started to suspect that this man could have already taken over from the father, because he seems to be, having a free reign and having powers that over and above what you would expect of an ordinary commander-in-chief of the defense forces.
Well, I mean, it's quite interesting that you were very categorical in saying that the general is not likely to run. We'll watch that space as we move forward. Now, let's go back to the civil society space. In 2021, experience was such that several civil society, citizen election observer networks and coalitions were denied accreditation by the Electoral Commission. Between 2021 and now, what would you say civil society organizations have done by way of drawing lessons from the experience of 2021? Or are we going to see a similar situation repeat itself in terms of how much access the election management body will give to citizen election observers and the media indeed to be part of this election in terms of monitoring and reporting on the electoral process?
So we have tried everything possible to mend fences with the Electoral Commission, because we learned that the arrest that was done on us was on the behest of the Electoral Commission. So we've tried to mend fences. We have been working with the Electoral Commission, and everything seems to be going rosy until August last year, when the Electoral Commission called for expressions of interest from civil society organizations that have intending to conduct civic education, voter education. The Electoral Commission has powers to accredit organizations that are intending to do this. So when organizations applied, I think 4 months later, they received the calls. Each of the applicants received the calls from the crime intelligence department. And they were being asked all manner of questions and asked to submit all sorts of documentation, the same documentation that had been submitted to the Electoral Commission. And the question we asked ourselves was what is criminal about voter education, civic education? But the bottom line is that nothing seems to have changed. So the Electoral Commission remains as suspicious to civil society as it were. The Electoral Commission continues to work with the security forces to deal with the civil society, and we think that was a bad signal. And many organizations have now decided not to actually apply for accreditation to observe elections, because it seems that the mutual suspicion that existed before continues to exist. But also we have had warnings from government officials, especially those that are very close to power. I think one of the warnings came from the president himself. Civil society to be careful with the money they receive to conduct election observation. And the article came out in one of the papers, the national papers, and that of course comes as one of the warnings to civil society. And therefore, the situation now is that the interest in a number of civil society organizations that used to invest in observing elections seems to have dwindled. But also we are trading very carefully. And like I said in the beginning, that many of our organizations have been denied permits to operate. So we are trading on a very thin ice. And so many of the colleagues have decided to get into self-censorship. So this did not exist before. So the idea is the message is clear that go slow on elections.
Interesting. So that actually leads me to asking about what is the general attitude of the average, Ugandan citizens towards this election? Are they confident that the election will be any better than previous election? Do you see any form of excitement amongst citizens to engage in the electoral process, or there are some of these early signs is making citizens to turn away from participating in the election?
So elections in Uganda are not something that citizens look up to. Elections in
Interesting.
Uganda do not always reflect what people feel. This is our voice, and so those that are excited about elections are those that expect to harvest money from the candidates. Remember, elections in Uganda are highly commercialized. So the election period, the campaign period, is harvest time, because candidates and political parties participating in these elections will come around with lots of money. So most of the young people, the women, but also the poor people in the rural communities are looking forward to reap from this. It's a time they are going to receive lots of gifts, lots of cash. They will also get lots of services, freebies. They will be taken around. They will be treated to political parties. The churches and church leaders, religious leaders will be treated to lots of gifts again from the candidates. Roads are going to be opened, so that the feeder roads, rural feeder roads, will be opened. Those that do not have connection water or electricity supply lines will be able to get these. Some of those that are failing to get school fees, money to take their children back to school, will get this. So these are the kinds of things citizens look up to, but not to participate in the election and get to vote leaders that would help them improve their livelihoods. It's more
so basically, we're just going to have an election just for the sake of it, and not an election that really reflects the genuine choice of citizens in a way. We've seen this in other countries also, whereby politicians use a period of elections campaign basically to induce voters with money or with food. So I lay this out because I know one of the work you do is campaign finance. How is ACFIM going to position itself in a way to look into issues of transparency and accountability when it comes to money influence in politics in the coming election? Is that an area of work that ACFIM will be working on actively?
Absolutely. So normally, by default, we would follow the money in those elections and campaigns and try to, to document what we can. We will also publish papers. We've been trying to advocate for increased transparency in the manner in which political parties and candidates outsource the monies, but also we are requiring for some sort of reforms to to provide for reporting on campaign expenditure. We now have a window of opportunity, because one of the legislators of the National Resistance Movement, the party in power, has obtained leave of parliament to prepare a private member's bill on financing of political parties, among other things. Her name is Honorable Faith Nakut. She comes from Napak, one of the districts in Karamoja. So we intend to work closely with her to further improve on that bill, especially ensure that there is a provision that would require political parties to disclose the source of their money, the money they are going to use on campaigns. So if that comes, but also be able to report immediately after the campaigns. That has been one. Those are some of the provisions that have been visibly lacking in the legal framework of Uganda. We'll try to do that, but we shall also continue to publish papers. We are working with the Center for Basic Research to publish studies and also hold seminars, but also run campaigns on social media, campaigns on voter bribery because you see, we believe that the laws we have in place have failed to stop voter bribery. So it is clear now you cannot stop voter bribery using law. because it is very difficult to prove a case of voter bribery, because you would require both the receiver and the giver of the money to confess, which is very difficult to achieve. So we are trying to now ride on the sensitization of the communities so that they can understand the demerits of accepting gifts and money from candidates and political parties for the sake of campaigns. So we will try to do these campaigns. We will continue to publish research pieces. We will continue to follow the money in campaigns, looking for traces of political corruption and expose these. This is all we can do, okay? And we intend to start using the structures we have already on the ground. One of the challenges we are having is that there seems to be a lack of appetite from our traditional development partners to support electoral activities in Uganda. And so, and without resources, you cannot go very far. And locally, it's not possible to raise funds to do this work. And so these are some of the challenges you're grappling with. But yes, we will try to do something during these campaigns in terms of monitoring campaign finance.
All right, thank you. So as we begin to round up on this conversation, from the scenario you have painted, is such that one would wonder how the civil society and the media sector in Uganda will fare in the coming election, against the background of that several international partners who ordinarily may have supported the activities of these civil society groups basically wound up operations. The resources are not there as it used to be. In what ways are civil society organizations looking internally to find resources to do the very important work like what you just described that ACFIM will be doing in the space of monitoring campaign finance in Uganda? Are you looking internally, not just Uganda, but within the sub-region to work with peers from different parts of the continent? Is that an opportunity that you're exploring?
Yeah, of course. There is a challenge of lack of African philanthropists to support work of civic engagement. But for the case of us and other organizations, we have structures on the ground already. So the issue is going to be a matter of depth, because now we may not work with the depth we would have wanted, but we can still do something on a smaller scale. So we will use those structures on the ground, which would be the resources we have. I will use those, but we continue to, of course, struggle, because organizations in Uganda are still grappling with the issues of economic, financial sustainability. We don't have enough social enterprises to support our own organizations, so it's not a good position to be in, but one that demands that doing nothing is not an option. So we'll do something. The issue would be the scale at which we are doing it.
All right. And if there was to be an opportunity for reform to still take place ahead of the election, what would you recommend that the country should prioritize?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that have to be prioritized is transparency. Because if you look at the areas of argument for why people distrust the Electoral Commission, is because they do not understand how the Electoral Commission does its work. Because the general feeling is that the Electoral Commission, messes up with the results, plays with the results. If that transparency can be exercised, that would be okay. The second one would be if we can have reforms that would still require transparency to understand where the money that is being thrown around comes from, because in our country, every time we come through an election, the country struggles. First of all, we have inflationary effects because of there being too much money chasing too few goods, but also the GDP, the gross domestic product, goes down because people would have abandoned the economic activity and gone to tap into the quick monies from elections. So these are some of the things that should happen. But I think lastly, we need reforms around the role of the military in the elections, because the military and security officers have been the leading perpetrators of electoral violence. So that has to happen, so that the too much force that is used to handle small electoral issues can be tamed so that the elections can be peaceful and attract women. Because when elections there's violence, women don't vote. And so those are some of the reforms we might need. But the challenge we have is that any reform that seems to alter the playing field are reforms that the party in power will not welcome. And therefore, for now, everything is working, so there's nothing to fix if you speak with the party in power. But for us, we think there's a lot to fix in order to bring about a level playing field.
Yeah, thank you. Those are very important points, because you talked about transparency, the role of the military, as well as questions around issues of campaign finance and indeed participation of women. I think we will be remiss if we don't talk about the place of youth, young Ugandans in this conversation, because Uganda is, has a very young, a predominantly young population. Do you see any innovative or how are the young ones engaging in this process? We've seen young Ugandans leading social movement protests, protesting against issues of corruption, requesting for better governance in the country. Do they see an opportunity in this election as one in which their voice will be heard?
Yeah, so what we see with young people, they have aligned themselves very well. So those that think they can tap into the cake, the kitty of the NRM party, the ruling party, have aligned with the ruling party. And those that are massively disgusted with the regime are aligning with the opposition, and most importantly, the National Unity Platform led by Honorable Chagulanyi. So they have divided. So you can, in other words, you can say those that are opportunistic have aligned with the party in power. Those that are angry and want change have aligned with the National Unity Platform. Yeah, but they are quite active. Many of them have interest and have demonstrated interest to also offer themselves for election. So let's wait and see whether they'll push through, because their biggest challenge has always been the lack of money to run a campaign. Yeah, but it remains to be seen if they will participate to a level much higher than what we saw in 2021.
All right, thank you. On a last note, for Ugandans out there who might be watching this and who feel discouraged about the state of democracy in the country, what would be your word of encouragement to them?
So Uganda is pretty much a young democracy. We have only returned to multi-party dispensation 20 years ago. As you know, democracy is always a constant work in progress. We believe that Uganda is progressing. We believe that the good days are yet to come. We are hanging in there because we think we have to keep, building and inculcating a culture of democracy. And this culture takes time. So it's not going to be, the work we are doing is not going to be a work of the faint-hearted. What we are going through is what you would expect to go through when you are building something. So those Ugandans outside, whoever is outside, needs to understand that we are here. We need to be supported. Do not despair. Democracy is built. Democracy grows. Uganda is still a young nation democratically. So we are still in the nascent stages where you have elements of authoritarianism, but those should not discourage us. We shall push on and continue to also bring others on board. And those that do not seem to have interest, we try to interest them. Because at the end of the day, we have one country, Uganda. We have no other.
Thank you. Any message for the international community? Friends of Uganda all over the world.
Yeah, friends of Uganda have to continue trusting in us. There has been a tendency to write off Uganda as a democracy basket case. I think that shouldn't be. We are only going through a stage of growth. These challenges we are going through, the violence, the violations of human rights, are things that citizens are not happy with, but are things also that we think we shall overcome as more and more citizens come to criticize these and dislike these. There are, of course, elements within the regime that you also believe and agree that this has to change. Things will change, but that will happen gradually. And so I think we will continue to hang in there, to push, to defend, because we need to defend democracy with all the powers we have. And we need to be able to build more numbers. We need stronger voices. the international community should trust us, but also call out those acts that when they happen. We like it when the U.S. government sometimes goes the extra mile of sanctioning some of the errant officials that are committing acts against humanity with the reckless abandon. They get to be sanctioned, and that kind of keeps the others in check. We wouldn't want to, we want to hear one voice coming out of the international community, a voice that that encourages and strengthens, but also gives comfort to the people that are going through these rough times. But otherwise, Uganda remains a peaceful country. For those that don't meddle in politics, I think they like it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So on that note, I really appreciate the insights you have shared with us here. Uganda remains a very important country. It's a very important player, both in terms of regional politics as well as stability on the continent of Africa. So we wish Uganda and Ugandans the very best as the train towards the 2026 election continues its journey. We hope everything will go well and Uganda continues to grow. Thank you, Henry.
Sure. Thank you for having me. It's been an honor and pleasure.